Okay.
Hello, KBHC viewing audience. I'm Julie Gerhardt, Operations Director for Kendall Betts Horn Camp, and I have with me today Bob Osmun from Osmun Repair. Or what is the official title of your business,
We
Bob?
call it Osmun Music.
Osmun Music. There you
We
go.
can't cover everything.
Want to make sure I get it correct. So Bob will be joining us at KBHC 2019 from June 19th through the 21st this year. So during the third week of camp. So those of you who are joining us for week 3 will be sure to be able to meet him and to learn a lot from his expertise. So Bob, can you give us a little bit more information about Osmun Music and tell us, kind of who you are?
Well, Osmun Music is a business that basically is a repair business. We repair all brass wind instruments with a special emphasis on horns and trumpets. And been in business since 1976. And we also make mouthpieces. We also sell some instruments. And that's about it.
Okay.
That's what we do.
How did you get into the business? How did you get interested in repairing instruments?
Well, when I was a student at New England Conservatory, I used to go down the street to an old repairman down in Boston to get my horn worked on occasionally. And he was, in addition to being an excellent repairman, he was a wonderful storyteller. He had been a trumpet player in the 40s and 50s and worked all over Boston. And his father had been a manufacturer of trumpets, which later turned into the Vega Band Instrument Company, which was a famous trumpet maker at one time and went on to become a general music store in Boston. And I used to go down just to hear him tell stories and just be there. And after I left school, I wasn't really doing much, so he started paying me $5 a week to come in and sweep the floor on Saturdays. So I did that for a while, and then I eventually just stayed. I was there for 7 years.
What was his name?
His name was William Tottle, Tottle.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
And you were at NEC, so he must have been in the Boston area, and you've kind of stayed in the Boston area.
Yes, he was in the basement of the Musicians Union.
Are you from Boston originally?
No, I'm from New Jersey originally, and my horn teacher when I was in high school was from Boston, and so I sort of picked up that ethos and came up here to go to school. Been here ever since.
So did you start Osmun Music right out of school?
No, I left school. I was only in school at the conservatory for about a year and a half, and I left, and then I worked for Bill Tottle for, like I say, for 7 years.
Sure.
After that period. And then I worked at Schilke in Chicago for a year before I started my own business.
And at first, was it just you?
It was just me, yes, and I was by myself. I originally started. I was working in another music store in Boston, and I worked in a store in the south of Boston as well. And then I rented a space and worked 2 days a week in my own business and the rest for other people until my own business got to the point where I could spend full time at it.
Nice. I like that strategy. So how has your business evolved in that time then?
Well, I always, as I said, I was originally a repairman, and I did brass, and still am a repairman, but I did brass, and over time, I had added people to who worked for me, and some have gone on to be well-known people in their own right in the business, and did that. A friend of mine lent me $5,000, which I used to buy Paxman French horns, became a Paxman horn dealer. At the time, they were being sold by a fellow in New York off his kitchen table. So,
Wow.
so we
Times have changed.
yeah, I guess so. I guess so, quite a ways. And then I started, as business grew and evolved, we started making mouthpieces. Like there was
Tell me
something.
about, tell me about your mouthpiece line. They're named after cities, yes?
Well, yes, I started out, I thought that there was a need for really good mouthpieces, and I thought there was no way for people to really tell which mouthpieces were which and how to make a logical move from one to another to try to get something that was more suitable for them. So we started out with 4 mouthpieces that we named after cities where they would be typically used, so that people who would buy them would have an idea of the kind of sound they could expect to get, and the kind of instruments they would work with, and have sort of a basis to start on that they could then build on.
What are the cities named?
Okay, well, we have a London. The London mouthpieces we sort of envisioned as being sort of, clear, direct mouthpieces and emulating the sounds of the great British virtuosos of the time. We had a Chicago series, which we were looking for that more of that Guyerish, gloomy Chicago sound. We had a New York series, which, of course, in those days meant Con 8Ds.
When you say in those days, I mean what year were these?
Oh, I think I started making mouthpieces around 95,
Okay.
96, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And we also had a Vienna series, which were very deep, convex shaped mouthpieces that hopefully emulate the Viennese horn sound.
Okay, so sorry, London, Chicago, what was the third one?
New York.
New York.
New York and Vienna, yeah.
Very good.
And of course, over time, other ones have crept in and variations have crept in.
Do you ever have anyone upset that their city didn't make it on the mouthpiece map?
Yes.
Really?
Someone was upset that there wasn't a San Francisco mouthpiece, and I said, "Well, be happy to make you one."
Perfect.
But no, but mostly no. We've got.
Did the differences have more mostly to do with the shape, or is it a combination of factors?
Well, it's a combination of factors. The shape is sort of a primary determinant of the kind of sound that comes out of the thing, and with the different mouthpieces, like for instance the Chicago and the London mouthpieces, because of the types of horns they're normally used with, tend to favor smaller throat size, whereas the New York or what we call now the Giardinelli series mouthpieces, because they were mostly designed to be used with horns like Con 8Ds, tended to favor a wider throat size. So they would go sort of together in that line. But the cup shape was the main determinant of sound, I think.
So you'll be joining us at camp this summer. So will you be bringing a sampling of mouthpieces for people to try?
Absolutely.
Maybe some for people to purchase?
I think we could arrange that.
Fantastic.
If people want to purchase them, we also have a lot of rims and different contours and also diameters. It's interesting, in America, there's almost no variation in rim diameters. Everyone plays on very similar diameters, and with the European ones, there's much more range available. So one of the things we did was to make our rims available in different diameters to accommodate people.
Great. So you have your line of mouthpieces is all separate parts. It's not a one-piece mouthpiece.
Well, we do some one-piece mouthpieces. We have some of the more common ones we make as one pieces, primarily to make them less expensive, so that people have an entryway in there and can kind of get started with the thing without having the expense of a two-piece mouthpiece or the gold rim, which tends to add a lot to the price as well. All our one-piece mouthpieces we still mark the cup and the rim separately with the idea that people need to know what they've got, so that if they want to change something, they can change it in sort of an organized and logical way instead of just going through somebody's junk drawer and pulling out.
There's a surprising amount of brass players experimenting with mouthpieces in just that way.
Well, how many rims do you see that don't have any kind of marking on them at all?
Right.
You don't even know, what they are or what they're supposed to be or whatever.
It's true.
So we're aiming for clarity. We try to make it as clear as possible, which we then sort of sabotage by having too many different models.
Well, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And for that I say thank you, because it can be very confusing.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think that a lot of people don't have enough confidence in their ability to tell, what works for them and what doesn't. People are more sensitive.
Do you usually have a perspective on that? If you're a third person observer, can you tell immediately whether a mouthpiece is really going to work for someone?
Well, to my way of thinking, I think it's with a cup. It's more important to have a cup that more or less suits the horn. So you can kind of get them down to a sort of a reasonable selection of things that are going to work pretty well, and then you say, oh, these will probably work pretty well. And then, as far as the rims are concerned, people have different ideas of what they're looking for, and they want a sharper or a flatter or a rounder rim, and there isn't any hard and fast rule. It's empirical. You really just have to go with what feels right and what fits right. And and a lot of the time it's a matter of efficiency. A strong player can make any piece of equipment do whatever he wants it to for a while. What you're doing on the last page of Mahler 1 can be different from what you did on the first page.
That is very true.
And that's where you need the help from the mouthpiece and from the horn. You need to take advantage of what it can offer you.
True. So when you come to camp, and by the way, for our viewers, Bob will be with us at camp, and I guess I said that at the beginning too, June 19th through 21st. What types of questions? I mean, I know you'll be fielding questions from participants, but what do you hope someone will ask? What's a question that you feel, and the answer is really in your wheelhouse?
Does this mouthpiece work with this horn?
Excellent. Good.
Is this mouthpiece good for endurance or bad for endurance? I want to sound yet darker and have even better higher register. That's all I do.
So come to Bob Osmun with all of your mouthpiece questions.
Yes.
He'll be your guru.
We'll give you some answers, and hopefully many of them will be the right ones.
Right, yes. If there is such a thing in such a subjective world, sometimes.
Well, yes, and like I say, I mean, it is a subjective world, and people need to be braver about their choices and choose what works for them, not what somebody told them will work will work for them. I mean,
Have you ever seen someone with a surprising horn mouthpiece combination that you thought that will never work, and then they're making it work, or that they're not making it work and there's an obvious?
Well, like I said, it's a matter of efficiency, and any good horn player can make anything work for a while.
Sure.
You know, one several years ago on Facebook, there was a fellow who was complaining mightily about a Paxman Model 20 horn that he was complaining about this and that, and he didn't like this and he didn't like that. And then finally he divulged that he was playing this thing on a Giardinelli C4 mouthpiece. And if you had wanted to pick the two most likely candidates to go together, that would be them. You couldn't pick a more inappropriate mouthpiece to stick in that horn.
So no wonder he wasn't happy.
So he wasn't. So it was not terribly surprising. It wasn't working very well for him. But
Do you have a particularly hot seller as far as your mouthpiece line is concerned? Is there one that's more popular?
Oh yeah, we sell our Chicago Cup sells by far the most of any of them.
And what types of horns does it pair well with usually?
Well, it pairs well with Geyer horns. Any Geyer style horn, it tends to work very well with. And of course, that's nowadays. That's by far the most of the new horns that are out there. Works great with Engelbert Schmidt horns. Most all of them. I mean, some horns like the Paxmans, we like the London Cup a little better. Seems to work better with the horn.
That seems logical.
It does seem logical, doesn't it? But it's also with the Yamahas, the London Cup seems to work better, like with a 667 or something like that.
Okay. So you definitely see some trends.
Oh yeah, well, like I say, we know which ones sort of work, and they all sort of work. They all.
Right.
but usually we know if you have X horn, you could hand them X cup, and that horn, that's going to work. Might not be their ideal, but it's a good place for them to start. And then, like I said, with rims, you can ask a couple of questions, and usually we have a rounder one and a flatter one and a reverse peak one, and you can usually narrow them down pretty well. And
what does it mean when you say reverse peak?
Well, some mouthpieces, some rims have the high point of the rim is sort of on the outside edge, like the Giardinelli C mouthpieces, for instance. Or there's a Lawson mouthpiece that's like that as well. And the idea being is that sort of tends to crowd your embouchure in a little bit and give you more support. Whether it works or not, I don't know.
So is reverse peak when it's on the outside edge, or when it's on
when it's on the outside edge? Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I mean,
fascinating.
Most mouthpiece rims, the peak is somewhere in the middle of the curve. So
I see.
It's different, and of course the flatter the mouthpiece is, and that makes the inside edge sharper, and the sharper the inside edge, the more it tends to favor the staccatos.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Well, yeah.
I need to get some of the. I need a book. I need some resources here. Sometimes I read a little bit more about this. It's really interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of books out there.
Yeah.
There used to be.
That'll be our next video interview where we'll talk about what's in your personal library.
Oh. Not enough French horn books, probably. I tell you.
Now, you mentioned when we just talked before about your the way you're making mouthpieces now, and I'm looking at my notes here. You have a new machine as opposed to using a lathe.
Well, they're all lathes. I mean, a lathe is any machine that spins a piece of metal and turns it. And as we we make the mouthpieces. They're all made on numerically controlled machines, CNC machines. And in the old days, the way you made a mouthpiece was you made a form cutter that would have the shape of the cup or the shape of the rim in them, and then that was fed into the mouthpiece to cut out that shape, and that was tended to be, I mean, if done well, it could be pretty good, but it tended to be fairly inaccurate, and of course then you have to deal with situations like the wearing of the tools and how they'll change dimensions over the time, et cetera, et cetera. In CNC machining, you use just a pointed tool that follows a path that the computer lays out for it. So everything is done in drawings, and then the drawings are transmitted into computer programs, and then the computer program makes the pathway that the tool follows, and that way every time you set the machine up, you're going to set the position of the tool accurately, and then they'll all come out the same, or very close to the same.
So then you're less like you're rifling through your teacher's junk drawer.
Yes. Yes. Well, of course, also it gives you much more flexibility to make different designs and things, because you can, instead of having to spend dozens of hours forming these very complicated form tools, you draw it on the computer, and then the machine can make it. So we can change things. That's one of the things that we do frequently, in fact, for people is we do a lot of work with rims, in terms of people like the shape of the rim, but they want it a little wider, or they want it a little narrower, and flatter, sharper. I mean, this is the sort of thing that used to be very laborious and time intensive, and now we can do it relatively quickly and easily, and even more important, we can do it precisely and exactly. So if somebody comes along 3 years later and they want, a rim like the one they used to have, except they want it 0.5 of a millimeter wider, we can do it. It's not.
So the possibilities really are endless here.
It's yeah.
That's fantastic.
We do a lot of custom mouthpieces for people, though. So,
well, awesome.
We'll try to do whatever people ask us to do. We do our best to do it. I'm not sure with with all the, I don't know, several dozen different mouthpiece contours we currently have, and all the different width variations and stuff that a custom-made rim is necessarily that necessary, but people want them. We're happy to do them.
Well, and I'd say that flexibility is probably part of the secret to your longevity in your business.
Yeah. Well, we try.
I asked you before, and we want to wrap this up a little bit, but I asked you before what your secret to longevity was, and you told me a 2-word answer. Do you remember what it was?
What? Don't die. Yeah.
Don't die. So advice from
always good advice.
The secret to longevity: don't die.
Yeah, well, it's worked so far.
Right. I love it. Well, Bob, it was a pleasure speaking with you today. I am going to wrap this up, but everyone who is coming to KBHC 2019 during week 3, he will be with us June 19th through 21st, and we look forward to having him.
Right.
Thanks for talking with me.
Thanks.